Good afternoon, everybody. And it is a privilege to be here and to share with you what I would say to myself at the age of 20. And so I want to share this with you. And because of the topic and the subject matter, what would you say to your younger self? I'd like to begin with a couple of quotes. And the first one comes from Winston Churchill, and it's a famous quote where he said that the further you can look back, the further you can see forward. Now, what's interesting is that Winston Churchill said that in relation to the Nazis in the Second World War, because he said to Hitler that if he could look far enough in the past, he would know that he would never win. And the reason why he would know that he was never going to win is because evil never wins. And for us, if anything proves that more, is the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that evil never ever wins. And so the second quote comes from a Danish philosopher by the name of Søren Kierkegaard, and he said this. He said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." And I thought that was a great quote for what we're trying to do today, which brings me to our topic of what would you say to your younger self? Well, the first thing that I would say to my younger self, if I were talking to myself when I was 20 years of age, I would say this. First of all, be yourself. And you're going to feel a lot of pressure from people from within your family, some from within the church, some from outside of the church, to be something or be someone else other than yourself. And there are those who will say you should be this or you shouldn't be that, or you should do this or you shouldn't do that, or you should go here or you shouldn't go here. But you should be yourself. Remember that as a human being, you are made in the image of God. And because you bear the likeness of God, you are uniquely designed. God only made one of you. And if he wanted you to be someone else or something else, he would have made you someone or something other. Because you are made in the image of God, there is something incredibly wonderful and beautiful about being human. And there is something incredibly wonderful and beautiful about the dignity of being you. Be yourself. It's the best course of action. It's like truth. Always be truthful, not because it's just the best course of action, but because it's the easiest thing to remember. So be yourself rather than a concocted version of yourself, not just because it's the right thing to be, but because it's the easiest thing to be. You don't have to keep up the pretenses. You don't have to keep wearing masks. The second thing that I would say to myself, my younger self at 20, is this. You are enough. Somebody said that we live in a culture of scarcity, a culture where it says to us, it's never enough. And we hear this many times. You're never perfect enough. You're never thin enough. You're never powerful enough. You're never successful enough. You're never smart enough or attractive enough. You're never extraordinary enough. You're never good enough. You're never spiritual enough, or you're never talented enough. And you can fill in your blank, never what enough. In yourself, you are enough. That's who God made you to be. And in Jesus Christ, you are more than enough. And remember that at the crucifixion, Jesus beat the daylights out of never enough. The third thing that I would say to my younger self is this, that life is all about relationships. It's all about relationships. Don't ever be ashamed of where you're from, and don't forget where you've come from. In your lifetime, you are going to encounter any number of life-altering events. Some of those are going to be crisis events, but one event in particular, is going to at first look like the greatest disappointment and the greatest crisis of your life. And that event will be the birth of a disabled child, a little girl who will be born with Down syndrome and a congenital heart defect. And what it first looks like, the greatest disaster of your life, is going to turn out to be the single most important thing that will happen in your life. This child will strengthen and enhance every aspect of your life. And further, you're going to meet the love of your life. You're going to have great children. You're going to have opportunities and experiences that you never thought were possible. And you are going to meet some of the greatest people in your life. And their greatness is not because of their status or their achievement. Their greatness is going to be because they are people. And so, Todd, no matter what you do in life, whether it's the media or the arts, pastoral work, technology, the sciences, education, the automobile industry, or sales and retail, you are not really doing any of those things. Remember, you are in the people business. So if it's that you're selling cars, you're not really selling cars. You're really in the business of dealing with people's lives. And people have phenomenal capacity. And most people are always trying to do their best. People matter, and people matter to God, so people should matter to you. And the last thing in this area I would say, Todd, is there's going to be a lot of growth in your life. A lot of things are going to change, while at the same time, they're going to remain the same. But learn to embrace the discomfort of growth that comes with it. And the fourth and the final thing that I would say to my younger self is this: God's grace is wider than it is narrow. God's mercy is greater than you can know right now at 20 years old. God's love is deeper than you have been told. That God's grace and God's mercy and God's love are wider and deeper than most of us evangelicals are even comfortable with. And you can trust that. God is incredibly generous. He'll be there for you. He will have your back and He will have your front. And He will never, ever let you down. So Romans chapter 11, verse 33 says this, and I'm quoting this from the Message. Have you ever come on anything quite like this extravagant generosity of God? This deep, deep wisdom. It's way over our heads. We'll never figure it out. And so, Todd, as you move forward in your life, this is my prayer for you. It comes from 2 Corinthians 13, verse 14, the Message. And may the amazing grace of the Master, Jesus Christ, and the extravagant love of God, and the intimate fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Remember, God will be insanely generous to you in every way and in everything.